Out there in the quiet stretch of the plains, the world feels empty. Just miles of grass swaying in the wind, and a horizon that never seems to end. But long before my time, that same open land hid something remarkable. An entire world beneath the surface. Whole families once lived right underfoot. Their homes were so cleverly disguised that travelers could walk right over them without realizing there was life below. These were the secret homes of Native Americans, places built not to be seen, but to belong. They built houses made of earth and moss, blending perfectly with the land around them. Those shelters kept people safe from the cold, the storms, and from enemies who never even knew they existed. But this wasn't about hiding out of fear. It was about harmony, about living with the land, not against it. Their homes weren't forced onto the ground. They were shaped by it. The earth itself became their wall, thick enough to hold in warmth through bitter winters, and cool enough to offer relief in the heat of summer. The roofs, covered in grass, seemed to grow right back into the landscape as if nothing had ever been disturbed. Even the entrances were built with intention, lined up with the sun's path and shielded from the strongest winds. To a stranger, the houses seemed to vanish into the scenery. But for the people who built them, those homes were exactly where they were meant to be. It wasn't about blueprints or fancy designs. It was about generations of observation, about truly understanding the ground beneath their feet. What the settlers saw as primitive was actually one of the smartest architectural ideas ever imagined. They had turned invisibility into strength. And now, even with our cities expanding and technology trying to outdo nature, I think back to those ancient builders. They knew something we've nearly forgotten, that the best kind of shelter isn't the one that towers above everything else, but the one that stands the test of time. Every hidden home carried a quiet lesson, one that modern architects are only now starting to rediscover. Every day, as we unearth pieces of that past, we're reminded that survival was always tied to understanding the earth itself. Picture it. A lone traveler crossing the plains at sunset, the horizon glowing gold, the grass rippling like waves, and underneath it all, a village resting unseen. The faint smoke from a fire drifts up, fading into the mist, and the traveler keeps going, unaware that life hums softly below. For those first outsiders, these hidden places seemed impossible. Where are the houses? Where are the people? They must have asked. What they didn't realize was that the homes, earthen lodges and pit houses, were buried right into the natural folds of the land. From above, they looked like small hills, blending so perfectly that you'd never know they were man-made. Entrances were carved away from the wind, roofs leveled and topped with soil and grass that grew back naturally, erasing any trace of construction. These homes didn't declare their existence, they merged with it. Their invisibility wasn't some trick of stealth. It was thoughtful design, born from the need to survive harsh climates and stay safe from both nature and threats. By building into the ground instead of above it, these communities shielded themselves from icy winters and scorching summers alike. That open plain, which might seem empty to us now, was once alive with a network of underground homes, warm, well-ventilated, and secure. The brilliance of those hidden dwellings lay in how deeply they understood the land, its air, its temperature, its light. Long before stealth technology or camouflage uniforms, these builders had already mastered a quieter kind of invisibility. It wasn't powered by machines. It was guided by patience and respect for the earth. Walking across that land today feels like walking over a story that never tried to dominate its surroundings. It simply endured. And in that endurance, it still whispers a truth. That real strength doesn't always reach for the sky. Sometimes, it waits quietly beneath your feet, waiting to be found again. This kind of building didn't start with hammers or poles, it started with listening. Listening to the wind, watching how the sunlight moved, feeling the shape of the ground. Builders would walk the land for days, even weeks, before choosing the right spot. A simple dip in the terrain might mean shelter from the storm. A slope facing south meant warmth in the wintertime. Every choice they made out there had purpose, nothing was left to chance. Once they settled on a location, the building became a kind of conversation between people and the land itself. They didn't scrape the ground clean or try to conquer it. They shaped it, First, they dig a shallow pit to anchor the base, lining it with wood and covering it with branches and grass. The walls never stood tall against the horizon. Instead, they curved inward, folding back into the earth. From a distance, the finished home looked like another small rise in the landscape. A hill topped with living grass, roots, and soil, thriving like it had always been there. Every material they used was chosen not for decoration, but for how naturally it could blend in. The dirt, the clay, the straw, the wood, all of it gathered from nearby, matching the land in color and texture. When rain came, the roof soaked it up just like the ground did. When the wind blew, the house didn't fight against it. The shape simply let the gusts slide by. No part of the structure called attention to itself. Every detail existed to make the house vanish into the scenery. Even the light inside was thought through with care. Smoke from the central fire escaped through a small opening in the roof, and that same opening let in a soft, diffused light. During the day, shadows shifted and folded gently across the walls, warming the space without making it dark or heavy. To a stranger, these homes seemed to disappear completely. But to the builders, they weren't hidden at all. They were perfectly placed. Their skill wasn't about secrecy. It was about precision, so much precision that visibility simply stopped mattering. What truly remained was balance. Comfort, protection, and the quiet beauty of blending in. Their invisibility didn't come from fear or mystery. It came from pure, practical genius. Sure, it protected them, but it also did something far greater. It created harmony with the environment. By sinking their homes into the earth or blanketing them with grass and soil, these builders achieved natural insulation long before anyone coined the term. They didn't need much firewood beyond what they used for cooking and living. In the winter, the thick earth walls would soak up heat from a single fire, slowly releasing it through the night. And in summer, those same walls shielded the inside from the blazing sun, keeping it cool and steady. Even the rain followed nature's logic. The slanted roofs guided water away gently, feeding the soil instead of washing it out. These homes didn't resist their surroundings. They worked with them, quietly and precisely. Inside, every inch of space had a purpose. The fire pit sat right in the center, not only a source of warmth but the heart of family gatherings. Sleeping platforms were raised slightly off the ground, keeping folks comfortable and safe. Food storage areas, dug into the floor, stayed cool year-round, preserving food naturally. Those same openings also served as vents, letting smoke out and fresh air in without losing the warmth inside. From the outside, the house disappeared. From within, it breathed, alive, adjusting to weather, seasons, and the rhythm of daily life. What we now call passive design or sustainable architecture was, to them, just plain common sense. These invisible homes remind us that true sophistication doesn't always come from technology. It comes from understanding. While others built barriers to keep the world out, these people created homes that belong to the world. Strong, enduring, and nearly invisible to any wandering eyes. Building a house that vanished into the ground took more than skill. It took calculation. Every curve, every packed layer of soil had a purpose that modern engineers might describe with formulas, but these builders knew it by feel. They didn't rely on blueprints or measuring tools. Their accuracy came from generations of experience, centuries of trial, observation, and adaptation. The frame was the soul of the structure. They'd choose tree trunks, ash, poplar, or young oak, because they were flexible and strong. These posts formed the skeleton of the house, lifting into a gentle, rounded ceiling without high, rigid beams. Smaller branches bent inward and were tied together, spreading pressure evenly from the top down to the ground. That shape let snow and wind slide smoothly over the roof, minimizing wear and strain. Then came the layers, an invisible form of engineering that made these shelters nearly indestructible. Grasses, reeds, and branches were laid in alternating directions, creating natural insulation. Over that, a thick layer of soil was packed on top. It didn't just camouflage the house. It stabilized the temperature inside. They judged the weight by instinct. Too little and the roof wouldn't insulate. Too much and it might cave in. But collapse was rare, almost unheard of. Their understanding of balance was that precise. Ventilation was another beautiful example of their balance. A single opening at the center of the roof let smoke rise, but also kept the air moving, creating warmth without ever choking the space. Even that small vent wasn't placed at random. It was angled carefully toward the dominant wind, so the smoke lifted naturally out of the home. To outsiders, these dwellings might have looked primitive, just mounds of dirt and grass. But in truth, they were self-regulating systems, perfectly tuned to their surroundings. Homes that breathed on their own, adjusting to the seasons without a single moving part. The genius of their design wasn't just in how they looked, but in how they worked. They vanished into the landscape because, in every sense, they were part of it. What made them remarkable wasn't what you could see above the ground. It was what lay beneath it. Their strength came from the buried layers below, a foundation that combined stability and safety in ways modern builders are still trying to understand. By digging down instead of building up, these native builders turned the earth itself into both structure and shield. The soil became wall, insulation, and protection all at once, staying steady through wild swings of heat and cold that would have torn ordinary cabins apart. Most shelters sank 3 or 4 feet into the ground, their sides lined with woven branches or wooden boards. That simple depression acted like a natural battery, soaking in warmth by day and releasing it gently through the night. When strong winds tore across the plains, they rolled harmlessly over the rounded roofs. Rainwater ran down and away, feeding the soil instead of breaking it apart. Even heavy snow, which could crush a wooden roof, only pressed these homes tighter, strengthening their compact shape. That hidden strength shaped daily life too. Underground, the acoustics softened every sound. Voices, footsteps, even the crackle of the fire. For families living in dangerous times, that quiet could mean survival. And yet, these homes weren't dark or suffocating. The central hearth filled the space with light and warmth, while small, carefully placed air vents kept everything fresh and dry. Over time, the grass grew thick again on the roof, stitching the house seamlessly back into the land. From a distance, it was impossible to tell where the earth ended and the home began. Inside, life carried on in perfect calm. Families cooking, working, laughing together, while outside, the wind screamed and the storms raged across the plains. Settlers who came later never could understand how such simple, low homes stayed standing while their own tall cabins splintered in the weather. They had chased grandeur. The native builders had pursued endurance. And in that quiet contest between visibility and resilience, it was the invisible that won. To the people who built them, these shelters were far more than homes. They were sanctuaries. In uncertain times, when rival groups clashed or explorers wandered too close, invisibility itself became a strategy for survival. The low, rounded shapes of their homes blended so completely with the land that from a distance, they looked like nothing more than shadows and hills. A traveler could cross an entire range and never realize a village was tucked into the folds of the earth right beneath his feet. Protection started with location. They avoided open plains and high ridges where smoke or movement might give them away. Instead, they built in shallow valleys, near rivers or patches of thick vegetation, using the land's natural curves to shield their communities. Shared spaces had hidden entrances or narrow trails masked by brush. Even their fires, so essential for warmth and life, were tended with care, fueled by slow-burning wood that made almost no smoke. Vents were angled so that what little smoke there was dispersed before it reached open air. Their invisibility wasn't isolation, it was defense by restraint. Rather than build tall walls or arm themselves with weapons, they trusted the quiet, the distance, and the patience of the earth. A well-placed village could thrive for generations without a stranger ever finding it. Children played in open meadows that outsiders thought were empty fields. Hunters and traders returned safely to camps that no enemy could locate. Even the materials themselves played a part in their defense. Soft earthen roofs absorbed the sound of footsteps. Thick layers of soil swallowed voices. And if danger ever came too close, families could vanish in moments, slipping beneath the earth into the safety they had built with their own hands. The entrance to those homes was simple but clever, sealed with a thick braid of rope or a solid stone slab. To us today, it might look like a bunker or a hiding place, but to the people who built it, it was nothing short of brilliance. They understood something that modern minds often forget, that safety doesn't always come from standing tall or showing strength. Sometimes the best protection is to stay exactly where you are, unseen, while the rest of the world passes you by without a clue. When winter rolled in, most folks around the world depended solely on fire to fight the cold. But the invisible homes of the native people, the real natives of the land, had already mastered warmth and coolness through design, not labor. Long before anyone thought of stoves or fans, these builders had created homes that practically took care of themselves, staying comfortable year-round with almost no effort. The secret was simple and profound: balance between earth, air, and heat. By setting their living spaces partially below ground, beneath the frost line, they found stability. Down there, temperatures stayed steady even when the snow piled high. The thick earthen walls absorbed warmth from a single central fire, storing it through the day and slowly releasing it through the night. Inside, the air never froze, not even in the harshest cold. And when storms howled across the plains, these homes stayed calm. No drafts, no rattling beams, no smoke clouding the air. Then, when summer came, the same design flipped its purpose. The cool soil surrounding the walls drew out excess heat, while narrow vents let the hot air drift upward and escape. The dome-shaped roof encouraged airflow naturally, creating a quiet exchange of warm and cool air that kept the inside several degrees below the temperature outside, without a single moving part. The builders didn't fight the weather. They read it, they anticipated it, and they worked with it. Even the fireplace was more than just a hearth. It was an engine of precision. Set exactly in the center, it spread heat evenly across the space. Above it, the smoke hole acted like a valve, opened when the fire burned too hot, closed when the night turned cold. Every element had purpose. To modern engineers, all of this might sound like textbook, passive design, or energy-efficient architecture. But these homes were built centuries before anyone gave those ideas a name. They didn't need wires, vents, or thermostats. They survived through proportion, placement, and patience. If you were to step into one today, you'd feel it right away. The steady air, the balanced warmth, the kind of silence that hums with intention. These builders weren't chasing comfort or luxury. They were designing for endurance. And somehow they achieved both. Before the first shovel ever touched the ground, there was listening. The builders read the land the way a man might read a book. Every slope, every shadow, every gust of wind told them something. The earth spoke its own language through shape, sound, and texture, and the builders learned to translate it. Those signs determined everything: where to dig, how to anchor, which way the doorway should face. This wasn't decoration, it was communication. Each home became the land retelling its own story in a human form. In the low valleys, where the wind slowed down, they found still air beneath the ridges. Near rivers, they avoided the soft, flood-prone soil and instead chose higher slopes carved smooth by ages of erosion. Even the tilt of a hill wasn't a problem, it was part of the plan. They dug into the incline, using the natural weight and gravity of the land as allies rather than obstacles. Then came the materials, all gathered from the world within arm's reach. They mixed clay into sandy soil for strength. If the earth was too heavy and rich, they added straw and bits of wood to keep it from cracking. Every substance came from the same ground the house would rest on, ensuring that as the shelter aged, it aged in harmony with its surroundings. Even the grass that would grow back across the roof came from nearby fields, blending perfectly in color and texture. Over time, the house didn't just return to the land, it became part of it again. That easy fluency between builder and landscape meant no two shelters were ever the same. Each one was a unique answer to the land that shaped it. The earth lodge on the plains, the pit house on the plateau, the hogan in the desert, they were all built in different dialects of the same language. It was an architecture without arrogance. These homes didn't demand attention. They simply participated in the world around them. Every small decision, from where the door faced to what kind of soil was packed into the walls, worked in quiet cooperation with nature. Survival wasn't something separate from the landscape. It was part of its vocabulary. Today, we celebrate sprawling suburbs and towers of concrete, structures built to stand out, to shout above the environment rather than belong to it. In our reach for height and noise, we've drifted away from the principle that once defined survival: understanding before construction. Those invisible homes of the past hold lessons that even the most advanced modern builders rarely practice. Now our houses rely on machines. Air conditioners cool sealed boxes, furnaces heat paper-thin walls, and filters force movement into air that's long forgotten how to flow naturally. Energy has taken the place of awareness. And that kind of comfort comes at a cost, a fragile stability that depends on constant input. When the power cuts out, even the strongest buildings stumble. But an earthen home? It never needed a switch to begin with. Its balance came from nature itself. The temperature stayed steady because the design worked with physics, not against it. Thick walls for holding heat, low ceilings to circulate air, and doors placed exactly where the breeze already wanted to go. These early builders didn't try to control their environment. They cooperated with it. That's the wisdom we've lost: consciousness before ambition. Those first shelters were self-sustaining, safe, and humble enough to fade back into the ground when their time was over. They didn't leave behind rubble or waste, only what the earth could reclaim. Some modern architects are beginning to find their way back to that truth. They study solar orientation, natural ventilation, earth-integrated design, ideas that were perfected centuries before the word sustainability ever existed. Because the real principle isn't new. It's old as the hills themselves. The invisible shelter teaches us that progress doesn't mean conquering nature. It means understanding it deeply enough not to start a fight in the first place. The future of architecture might not rise higher into the sky. It might begin again beneath our feet, in the quiet ground that has always been waiting. Centuries ago, families stepped through doorways barely wider than their shoulders and disappeared into the earth. Inside, the soil and silence built lives that endured winters fierce enough to destroy everything above. What they made wasn't just a home, it was proof that understanding the world is stronger than trying to dominate it. Today, those homes lie hidden beneath fields and forests, their roofs long since returned to the soil. But the idea lives on in every design that values balance over excess, function over flash. Architects armed with satellites and sensors are now rediscovering lessons once taught by a hillside's curve or the steady depth of the frost line. The real future of sustainable living might not shine with glass and steel. It might rest quietly in forms that blend into the landscape yet keep us safe and whole. The invisible shelters remind us that strength doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it hides, waiting patiently for the world to remember. Every hill, every quiet trail beneath our feet still carries that voice from the past, whispering the same truth. We already knew how to live in harmony. We just stopped listening.